Hey everyone, today we're going to work on drawing buildings in one-point perspective. So you will need a sheet of art paper if you have it, or any blank sheet of paper. I do prefer not to have lined paper, but if that's all you have, then that will be fine. So you'll also need a pencil, a ruler, and an eraser if you think you might need it. So let's get started. First, we're going to create our horizon line. It's the same thing, kind of the same steps that we had when we were drawing our shapes. And it's all the same introduction, just what we do after we draw the shapes is what's going to be different. So we're going to draw our horizon line first. You can keep it towards the center, or if you want to move it up a little higher so you have more room for your building, since that's what we're creating, that would be fine too. I would suggest not having it too low. Okay, so we have our horizon line now. The second step is to add our vanishing point. Again, the vanishing point sits anywhere on the horizon line and is where everything disappears to. And I've been asking everyone to kind of keep it towards the center just to make it easier for yourself. If you do want to challenge yourself, you can move it off to the side a little, but I wouldn't do too close to the edges just because it might cause some confusion for you. So I'm going to put mine in the center just to keep things easy. And now we normally from this point would draw our shapes, but I actually want to do something else first. And since we're drawing a cityscape, I want you to have either a path or a road down the center of your picture. So the path could mean that it's an apartment complex, or it's a shopping mall with a path down the center, or even a road down the center. Or it could be like a neighborhood street or a street with shops on either side, whatever you want it to be. So I'm going to create a road, and I'll show you how to add sidewalks in as well. So I'm just going to take my ruler and connect it to my vanishing point. And I'm just going to draw two diagonal lines, kind of making the shape of a triangle. You don't want it to be too skinny because that might make things challenging as well. So this is about a good enough width. Okay, so this will become my road, and something to start keeping in mind as we're building this is that as everything goes closer to the vanishing point, it's getting farther away, which means everything starts to get smaller. So when you go to add lines, if you want to add lines down the center of your road, they would be longer first, and then the spaces between them would start getting closer together. The lines themselves would start getting smaller until they just became like dots disappearing into the distance. So they start a little bit longer and then progressively get smaller as they go away. Okay. Similar thing for sidewalk. I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to do that. I want sidewalks on either side of my road. You can do just one, or you can forego the sidewalk altogether. That is your choice. So I'm just going to add an additional diagonal line on either side. And these will become my sidewalks along the side of the road. You could also do this where this stripe here is like grass, because sometimes in neighborhoods there's a grassy part and then a sidewalk and then someone's yard. So that's up to you how many lines you want to make. So mine's just going to be a sidewalk right directly next to the street. So to create the lines is going to be a similar process as we do for the road. And we'll draw horizontal lines this time, going across our sidewalk. So these are those dents in the cement that show the separation and make it all nice and neat. So as I'm moving my ruler up, I'm trying to keep it level and even. And I'm progressively closing the spaces between my lines. So I'm making them a little bit shorter as I go along. This kind of takes some practice with eyeballing it, but I trust that you'll be able to do this. So as I'm moving along, my lines are getting closer and closer together. So you can take the ruler all the way down if you would like to keep it even. But if you feel comfortable enough by the time you get it to smaller portions like where I am at, you can take the ruler off and just draw some lines yourself. So it depends on how technical you want to be with it. So you can see my lines are starting to get a little bit closer together. Now I'm just going to finish it off. And the sidewalk disappears forever. Okay, so now you have a road and a sidewalk for your picture. So the next step is to add our buildings. And what I'm going to ask you to think about is, do you want to see the roof of your building or do you not want to see the roof of your building? So this will depend on how short or tall you want your buildings to be. Even if it's short, you could still make it multiple stories. Like if you wanted a two-story house, a house with 2 floors, you could still fit that in with a square shape. Or if you wanted more of a rectangle, it could be an apartment complex, or it could be a townhouse, or it could be one of those types of buildings that has an apartment on top and a shop on the bottom, however you want to do it. This can be a made-up town, it can be a place you're familiar with, or a place you would like to live, anything, really anything. So I'm going to show you how to do both kind of buildings. So I'm going to draw a square on this side, down at the bottom. So with my square, this is going to become kind of what just like a single family home, essentially. It's standalone home. Or it could just be a building on its own. And so by drawing it down here, this means that this space will be room to make a roof, which I'll show you how to do. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle that goes above my horizon line. It doesn't need to go too high, unless you want like a really tall skyscraper that goes at the top. Like you could do that if you wanted to. Okay, so this is going to be my rectangle, tall kind of townhouse building. I might do the half and half apartment, half shop kind of a thing. So they can sit on the same line if you want them to. You just might want to make your rectangle a little bit bigger if it sits lower, but either way is fine. So just like we practiced with our shapes last week, you're going to, the next step, once you have your building started, these are going to be the faces of the walls of your building, the ones that are facing you, obviously. And now you're going to connect them to your vanishing point, just like we did with our practice shapes. So since these are going to be solid buildings, you won't need to connect all 4 corners, only the 3 corners that are the closest to the vanishing point. So we're going to need our bottom line, bottom vertices here. And you can draw, I mean, these are orthogonal lines, and you can draw these lightly. You can always come back in and darken ones for the shapes that you need. So again, I suggest drawing them lightly because you will need to erase whatever you don't use. So your picture turns out neat. So I'm going to connect my top left and my top right. So right now my building is not standing alone. It is disappearing and going on forever into the vanishing point. I'm going to go ahead and connect my rectangle as well. So for this one, since it sits on the horizon line, I only need to connect 2 sides because it won't be able to reach the other one. 2 corners, I mean. So essentially you could go in and erase the horizon line from within this shape. so you don't get confused about which line is which. Actually, I want to keep this one because I don't know when my line's going to end yet. Okay. So we have our buildings started, and just like we do with our other shapes, we need our edges that will close them off. So we're going to determine how long or deep we want our buildings to be. So since this one's going to be kind of a standalone house, I want to give it more spaces. It's going to be the front side of the house, where the front door is going to be. So I want to give it a little bit more room. So I need my vertical edge that's going to close off the building. And that's going to go between these two orthogonal lines. And then if I wanted it to have a flat roof, I could just add a horizontal line this way, and this would close off my shape and give it a flat roof. But something I can also do is create a roof. So since this is going to be the side of my building, usually roofs slope towards the front of the house. So what I can actually do is create a triangle that sits above my square, just like our houses that we used to draw when we were younger. A square with a triangle on top, same exact purpose. So this will be the side of my roof. And then what I'm going to do is connect this top edge, top corner, to my vanishing point. So I'm basically creating a triangular prism on top of my building. So the last thing I need is to create this vertical line to close off my roof, or diagonal line to close off my roof. And that's going to connect to the wall that I just drew back here. So now I have a roof. So to kind of make that look a little more solid, I can erase these lines because I don't need these anymore, because my roof will be solid. Okay, so I have a house with a roof, and I'm going to finish up my townhouse. So this one's going to be a little bit skinnier. And then since it's a townhouse, I'm actually going to, they're going to be connected townhouses. So what I'm actually going to do is continue making some vertical lines to make additional houses. So the same concept works for our sidewalk. On the side too is to make our lines a little bit closer together as we go. So I'm going to do 3 buildings here, because I'm going to be asking you to create 5 buildings. So this will be 3 buildings on this side, and then I'll show you how to add a house on the other side. So 1, 2, 3. This is building 4, and I'll show you how to add a building on this side. So same process, I can create a whole other, using this same set of orthogonal lines, I can create another building sitting right next to this one. So what I'm actually going to do, instead of connecting them together like these ones, I'm actually going to create a gap that's going to be like an alleyway or a yard space in between these 2 buildings. So I'm going to create 2 vertical lines, 2 edges to make my secondary building. So this will be this front corner, and then I'm going to make my back corner. And you want to make sure your lines are vertical for these. If they're a little bit crooked, your building's going to look like it's leaning over. Okay, so since it's also going to have a roof, I can use these same lines to help me out. So I'm going to use a diagonal line. And create my roof that way. So as you look at it, you can tell that this house isn't quite complete back here. There's something missing in between. And what we need is to kind of make an illusion of these 2 shapes right here. So what we're going to do is connecting our bottom front corner of our building, we're going to create a horizontal line that's going to create a corner for our square. We're going to do the same thing on the top. So this creates the side of our house. And then we need one line back here to be the end of our roof. Okay, so I can erase this. It's crooked. Okay. So now you have building number 5. So you have 3 townhouses and you have 2 single-family homes. So the last thing I'm going to show you to do today is how to add doors and windows to our buildings. So first we start with if we're going to do a door, we're going to start with the top of the door. So I'm going to take my ruler, and these go along those invisible orthogonal lines. So you want to think about where you want your door to be placed, if you want it in the center, if you want it off to the side. I'm going to put mine kind of close to the center. And I don't want it to reach too high because this is going to be a 2-level building. So it's actually going to be kind of short looking. So I want it to be about here. I'm going to draw a diagonal line along that orthogonal to make my roof, and I can actually keep it the same for this one too, and match. So this is going to be the top part of my roof, or my door, I'm sorry. So then the last step is to create vertical lines, which will be the sides of our door. This shows that the door is standing straight, standing tall. If you were to use diagonal lines, it would look like your door was falling or not even attached to your building at all. So we're going to use vertical lines to show these. And now we have 2 doors. Do the same thing on the townhouses. These will be 3-level townhouses, so they're going to have doors over here on the side. 1, 2, 3. And then use vertical lines to make the sides. Okay, kind of keeping in mind that they get a little bit smaller as you go, especially because your space starts to close in. All right, so those are doors. And the last thing I'm going to show you is how to add a window. So I'm going to add a window to each one. You're welcome to add more windows after this, but I'm just going to show you the basics of how to get it started. So I want windows, at least 1 on each side of my door. So I'm going to start the same way. The tops of my windows are going to be in line with my door, top of my door. So I'm going to draw another diagonal line to be the top, and then I actually want a second one. So I don't want my window to come all the way down to the bottom. I want to leave a space in between. So I'm going to make sure my ruler is at least a little bit above that bottom line. You want to kind of make it parallel, a little bit off to the side. You can always erase your extra lines if you end up going over. So I have a little bit of a gap there. This is a very narrow house, so it's a little harder. So you can always make a little bit of a taller square if you want to. So I'm going to add my vertical lines to close out my window. Like that. So now I have my windows. Do the same thing on my townhouse. I'm actually going to do second floor. So I'm going to add 2 windows. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then leave space for the bottom part. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. And then just add the vertical lines in. Once you feel comfortable not using your ruler, you don't have to, because sometimes it gets harder when the shapes get smaller. Just always remember that they're going vertically. Okay, so now you have your rows of windows. You have an extra space up here if you want to add some more. You can do the same thing if you want to add a second row of windows on here. If you want windows on the sides, these are just going to match the shapes that you already have. So if I wanted a window on the first floor, I'm just going to add a square here. Maybe we want one on the second floor. And just add a second one. So these are going to match the shapes that they're on, the faces of the shapes that they're on. So I can do the same here. I'll do on the second floor. It's going to be a little vertical. Rectangle. And then maybe I want it on the third floor too. Okay, so that is how you draw houses and buildings and with doors and windows and a road and a sidewalk in 1-point perspective. Look forward to seeing what your drawings look like.